Range. It's a topic that I had a really hard time getting a grasp of when I was a younger player. And I think the main reason why I sort of had a harder time with my range up until recently was because I always sort of followed other people's well-hearted advice, let's just say. So then I started really diving into thinking about things a little bit differently. And I like what Wynton Marsalis's 12 Ways of Practice says, and it's summarized really well. First of all, you got to be optimistic, I think, about you can do this. Then what I've noticed in my own progression in range is that I had an open mind. I went to anyone and everyone to pick their brain, to get information and basically have a source of all this information that I could use and experiment with. And that's another point that actually Wayne Bergeron brought up in a recent video I watched of his. Experimentation is huge. And it led me down to realizing that in my own playing, I needed to focus on posture, and I've done a video on this. Just chest out, shoulders back, which opens up this here. I focused on the open breath in. Religiously for a few months I did that as part of my warm-up until it became muscle memory. And you'll notice that no matter what G I play now, I start with that open breath. And I noticed that about other players too. So let me demonstrate that. Low G up to high G. So every time I take this big breath before each note, no matter what I play, that was a huge realization. The other thing I realized was, what I really paid attention to is my body. What am I doing with these muscles around the mouthpiece? What am I doing with the muscles or the area around the aperture inside of my mouthpiece? The third element that I looked into was what am I doing with my tongue? And I noticed for the longest time I didn't pay attention to my tongue. I just kind of let it sort of do its own thing without being aware. And the fourth thing that I really started paying attention to was the balance between air, excuse me, and the physical setup for each note. And I noticed that Wayne Bergeron, again, I'm going to reference his videos a lot, and you know what's wrong with referencing one of the greatest. He talked about pushing away, which to me means we're engaging all these muscles around the mouthpiece and the aperture, and we're squeezing them together or engaging all these muscles and sort of puckering. This is where the whole concept of puckering comes in. That to me was really important. And with my tongue, I also noticed that it is now anchored, and I consciously do this now, not anchored, but it pushes against my bottom teeth. When I'm playing low, everything sort of rests on the bottom, but as I increase my range, what happens is the side of my tongue, they touch the roof of my mouth, but the center of it has this channel that lets the air flow through out of my aperture. That's really important to realize. So think about your tongue position, think about this here, and have an open mind and take in what other people are saying and experiment. Really take time to experiment in a smart way. You know, don't pound, don't force the end result, don't focus on the high note, focus on how to get it. And here's an element that I really, for myself, want to keep in mind. Whatever I do, I want to be able to recreate. So this is why I have a hard time buying into squeezing notes or squeaks, because the squeak to me is an uncontrolled way. I can't control the squeak. I can put my lips together and squeak out some higher notes, but I can't replicate it. I need to be able to replicate what I'm doing. And those four elements, what you're doing with posture, what you're doing with breath, and what you're doing with the muscles around the mouthpiece. And then also, I almost forgot, I started to experiment with the balance of air and the physical sensation here. And what I noticed is I need to focus more on air when I'm low, and I need to focus more on this setup when I'm high. So that's my little range rant for now, and I will post a couple of exercises that really helped me in another video.